There was a road in America, 2,448 miles of it, that didn't just take you somewhere. It was somewhere. It started in Chicago, where the concrete canyons gave way and the land opened up. It crossed the Mississippi into Missouri. It cut through Oklahoma flatlands and Texas panhandle dust and New Mexico desert and Arizona canyon country. And it ended right where a continent runs out of road, at the Pacific Ocean in Santa Monica, California. They called it America's Main Street, the Mother Road, Route 66. And for about 30 years, roughly from the time the soldiers came home from the Second World War to the moment the government decided it was no longer necessary, it was the most important road in the country, not because of where it went, but because of what it was. It was the place where a family from Illinois could load up their Buick on a Saturday morning and drive west into a country they'd only ever seen in magazines, where a motel owner in Tucumcari, New Mexico, lit his neon sign every evening because he knew at some point before midnight a tired family would round that bend and need a place to sleep, where a gas station attendant in Amarillo, Texas, checked your oil and washed your windshield without being asked, because that's what you did. It was a two-lane conversation between the American people and their own country. Before the interstates, before the bypasses, before America decided that speed mattered more than the journey, this road was something that almost no infrastructure has ever been, before or since. It was personal. You drove through the middle of every town it passed, not around it, not past an exit ramp sign with the name on it in green letters, through it, down the main street, past the hardware store and the diner and the barber shop and the five and dime. You saw the people. They saw you. The road made that happen. Think about what that actually meant for the people who lived along it. In 1950, a woman named Lillian Redman was running the Blue Swallow Motel in Tucumcari, New Mexico. She'd taken over the place in 1958 and would run it for the next 2 decades. Every single night, she made sure every guest felt like they were staying somewhere that mattered. Rotary phones in each room, garages for the cars, actual garages, 1 per unit, so your vehicle sat sheltered while you slept. A neon sign out front that turned Tucumcari's darkness into something warm. She wasn't selling rooms, she was offering sanctuary. And she wasn't alone. Along 2,448 miles of Route 66, there were thousands of people like her. The Whiting brothers, 4 brothers who built 100 family-owned gas stations from Texas to California, luring in drivers with advertisements for free ice. The owners of the Wigwam Motel in Holbrook, Arizona, who built their rooms in the shape of giant concrete teepees because they understood that travelers didn't just want to stop, they wanted a story to tell when they got home. This was the invisible architecture of Route 66. Not the pavement, not the signage, not the federal highway designation. The people, their choices, their creativity, their daily acts of hospitality to strangers who would be gone by morning and replaced by a new set of strangers tomorrow night. That was the road. And the country had no idea what it was about to lose. To understand what Route 66 really was, you have to understand what America was in 1950. The war had just ended. The men who came home were done with sacrifice, done with rations and restrictions and being told to wait. They wanted motion. They wanted to go. And the automobile, which had been building toward this moment since Henry Ford put the country on wheels, suddenly became the instrument of that freedom. Between 1945 and 1955, the number of registered cars in America nearly doubled. Think about that. Nearly doubled in a decade. And where did all those cars go? West. Always west. Because west was where the country still felt unfinished. West was where the Grand Canyon waited, and the desert went on forever, and California promised something that was hard to put into words, but everyone seemed to understand anyway. Route 66 was the road they took to get there. But here's the thing that most people miss, and this is the part that matters. The journey wasn't a necessary inconvenience. It wasn't the thing you endured to reach the destination. The journey was the destination. When you drove Route 66 in 1955, you drove through the painted desert in Arizona at sunrise, and the colors were like nothing that had a name yet. You stopped at Meramec Caverns in Missouri because the barn advertisements had been telling you about it for 50 miles, and by the time you saw the entrance, your kids were vibrating with anticipation. You pulled into a frozen custard stand in Springfield, Illinois, because you could smell it before you could see it. That particular sweetness that mixed with the road dust and the hot afternoon in a way that your body would remember for the rest of your life, even when your mind forgot everything else. This was not accidental. The people who built the roadside world of Route 66 understood something that the interstate designers never would. Human beings need to be surprised. They need to round a curve and see something they didn't expect. They need to stop for something ridiculous, a 60-foot Roadrunner statue, a trading post shaped like a teepee, a steakhouse in Amarillo that would give you the meal for free if you could finish 72 ounces in under an hour. They need, occasionally, to get out of the car and stand in the same air as another family from a different state and nod at each other in the shared recognition of people doing the same thing. The interstate highway system that replaced Route 66 was designed by engineers. Route 66 was designed organically by people. There is something else that almost never gets talked about, and it's possibly the most important thing. Route 66 was, for a generation of American women, one of the few places where it was possible to build something of your own. Alberta Ellis ran a bed and breakfast in Springfield, Missouri, and also operated a social hall called the Rumpus Room, one of the few spaces along Route 66 that welcomed Black and POC travelers and gave young people somewhere to gather. She built that from nothing in the 1940s, in a country that didn't make it easy. Women like her ran the diners, managed the motels, kept the books, raised the children, fixed what broke, and smiled at the next wave of strangers, because the road demanded it. Their labor made the whole enterprise possible. It just didn't always make it into the history books. The road belonged to everybody who drove it, but the people who built the world along it, who made it worth driving, were often people the official story forgot. That was the invisible architecture. The travelers got the story. The people who stayed, who chose a town on that road and built a life there and gave something to every stranger who passed through, they made the story possible. On June 29, 1956, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed a piece of paper. He didn't think much about Route 66 when he signed it. He was thinking about the German Autobahn, which he'd seen firsthand during the war, those wide, fast, engineered highways that could move armies. He was thinking about nuclear evacuation routes. He was thinking about efficiency. The Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956, $25 billion, 41,000 miles of new highway, the largest public works project in American history to that point. It was, by almost any measure, a remarkable achievement. It was also the beginning of the end for the road that had held the country together. The new interstates didn't go through towns, they went around them. That was the point, actually. Fewer stoplights, no small-town speed limits, no distractions. You could now drive from Chicago to Los Angeles 17 hours faster than you could in 1956. 17 hours. But here is what those 17 hours cost. The Highway Beautification Act of 1965 meant that the old Route 66 businesses, the diners, the motels, the trading posts, could no longer put up signs visible from the new freeways.
You couldn't advertise on the freeway if your business wasn't on the freeway. And if drivers didn't stop, drivers didn't last long. The road didn't die all at once. It died town by town, sign by sign, business by business, over 30 years.
In Oatman, Arizona, the bypass came in 1953. By the 1960s, the town was a ghost town. In Seligman, Arizona, Angel Delgadillo had been cutting hair in his barbershop since 1950. He watched the I-40 open and take the traffic away. He described it simply. Overnight, Seligman's livelihood disappeared. For 10 years, the townspeople struggled on or moved out. Overnight, not gradually, not in slow motion, overnight. That was how it felt to be a town on Route 66 when the bypass came. One day you were on the main road. The next day you weren't on any road that anyone was using. And the government that had built the world's greatest road system didn't look back. In 1985, on an unremarkable Thursday in June, a government body called the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials officially removed the number 66 from the United States highway system. No ceremony, no formal farewell. The signs came down, the shields came down. The road that had carried Dust Bowl families west in the 1930s, that had taken returning soldiers home in 1945, that had given a generation of American families the most important summers of their childhood, that road was, officially, no longer a road. Just like that, a meeting, a vote, a Thursday. But something happened that the engineers and the highway officials didn't predict. People didn't let it go. Almost immediately after Route 66 was decommissioned, preservation associations started forming. First in Arizona, where Angel Delgadillo, the barber from Seligman who had watched his town empty out, organized a group of business owners and lobbied the state until, in 1987, Arizona declared the Seligman to Kingman stretch historic Route 66, the longest surviving continuous section of the original road, 159 miles of it. He got tired of people talking about the road in the past tense. And here is what that tells you about what Route 66 actually was. It wasn't a highway. A highway is infrastructure. Infrastructure gets replaced when something more efficient comes along, and nobody holds a funeral. Route 66 wasn't infrastructure. It was a relationship between Americans and their own country, between the people who traveled and the people who stayed, between the idea of freedom and the very specific, very particular, irreplaceable experience of rounding a curve in the New Mexico desert at dusk and seeing a motel sign flicker to life in the gathering dark. That's not something you can replace with an exit ramp. The Blue Swallow Motel in Tucumcari, New Mexico still stands. The Wigwam Motel in Holbrook still takes guests. 85% of the original road is still drivable, and people from 40 countries come to drive it every year, not because it's the fastest way west, but because it's the only way to travel a road that still remembers what travel used to mean.